Hello, I'm Bill Greer, President of Smart Recovery USA.
And I'm Mark Ruth, the Executive Director of Smart Recovery USA. On behalf of our past, present, and future SMART leadership team and our worldwide SMART community, we'd like to share with you several extraordinary presentations from our 2019 Silver Anniversary National Conference.
We hope they will inform your work and inspire your service to SMART. Together, we will embark on our next 25 years of helping individuals and families recover from addiction and find balance and purpose in life.
I excelled on both the football field and in the streets, even though that wasn't probably a good thing. And as that happened, I had a love-hate relationship with football. My father was a coach who never was really around, and I said, if I play football, maybe he'll come around. He still never showed up, never came to a single game. In that point, I became really good at football, one of the top football players in the state. And as college got around, I had buried 8 friends before I graduated high school. Held one of my best friends while he bled out. And my family in the black community did not believe in mental health. They didn't believe in therapy, and I never got treatment for any of those things. I was going through life thinking I was fine, believing I was okay, telling everybody I was okay. I ended up getting a scholarship to a university in Florida to play football. It was a perfect storm that was going to hit me, and hit me hard. I found myself my freshman year 15 miles away from home with a bunch of untreated problems that I never really had dealt with or knew that I had. As I entered college, I had no idea what addiction was. I had no idea what recovery was. 3 games into my college career, I dislocated my shoulder. I went to the sidelines and the trainer told me, you can go out and go to the hospital, or you can take 2 of these pills and I'll pop your shoulder back in and you can go in the game. And of course, I took the pills. I was on a year-to-year scholarship, meaning I had to earn my spot every single year. And there was one thing I knew is I did not want to go back to the hood. I did not want to go back to that housing project. So I took the pills. After the game, I asked the trainer what those pills were. She told me they were Percocets. I asked her for a script, and from then on, for the next 4 years, I was given a script of 60 Percocets a month. I've learned that the perks, as I was taking them orally, one of my friends, she told me, hey, it hits you a lot faster if you crush it down. Then I started sniffing the perks. There was this feeling that I've been chasing my whole life that I felt when I sniffed that perk. A feeling that I needed, that to replace that hole from my father, from my mother. Those things that I wanted, I felt in drugs. I tell people all the time that the first thing I ever fell in love with was opiates. And it's the truth. It was the first thing I truly loved, that feeling. I had dreams that were big, that I wanted to achieve, that opioids destroyed. My senior year, I got an undrafted rookie free agent contract to play on the practice squad for an NFL team. When I got to this NFL team, they believed that I had no reason to be using perks and did not need to be on opiates. I disagreed strongly. So much so that I failed 5 drug tests. When they gave me the 6th drug test, they told me that this drug test is in 3 days. All you gotta do is not use drugs for 3 days. I crushed a perk and sniffed it before I went in to take the drug test and prayed that the test was going to come back negative. Well, it didn't. I was given a plane ticket home on Christmas Day. My mother picked me up from Logan Airport. I told her I had a concussion. I'd be back in a week. I hadn't seen my family in 2.5 years. I kissed my mother and didn't see her for another 6 months. During that time, I was sent to more than 30 treatment programs. I was sectioned 3 times by my mother, and during one of those sections, I discovered heroin. And I fell in love even more, deeply in love. There was this warm sensation I got every time I did heroin that I could not explain. There was a feeling I couldn't explain. And every time I tried to stop, I was told, you have to admit that you're powerless and give it over to your higher power. That's the only way you could be sober. And for me, that just did not work. Didn't have a higher power, and I didn't care to have one. Eventually, I ran into a nurse who was amazing, and she told me, this treatment thing, you're becoming a treatment all-star. You know every treatment facility, they all know you, they all love you, and you can get into any treatment program you want. But you also have a solid family foundation, and I want you to go to this outpatient program. When I went to this program, I discovered Smart Recovery. I didn't want to be in the program. I wore sunglasses, sat in the back row. I was high off marijuana half the time. And it just so happened one day, I was sitting in the corner with my sunglasses on, half asleep, and I heard them say, if you have a higher power, great, but if you don't, you can still get sober. And that was the first time I'd ever heard that. Now, I've been to 35 treatment programs, and that was the first time I ever heard that. And I sat up, and I began to listen. And there were people that thought like I did. I didn't think I was powerless. I felt like I needed to find a way to get my power back. I needed to find a way to become somebody more than DeSean the gang member or DeSean the football player, because that was the only identity I had. I remember people asking me, what are my morals? What are my values? I had no idea. I'd always been good at being a part of the group. I never knew how to be an individual. I didn't know who DeSean was. Smart Recovery gave me a way to discover myself. They gave me a way to find out who I was, what I wanted to do, what I wanted to be. I constantly would say I needed to find a new approach to an old dream. I had been in recovery for 6 months, and I still was miserable, completely miserable. Meetings, they served as a placeholder, and eventually, I don't like meetings. I like facilitating meetings. I do not like going to meetings at all. And I had a coach that reached out to my mother and said, how about, you ask DeSean if he wants to coach? And it was something that changed my life in that moment. I found something that I was passionate about. I had this level of intimacy being on the football field, again, in coaching. I found a new approach to an old dream, and it took off from there. Eventually, I found a mentor, Matt Robert, who does like 12 meetings a week, something insane. And I would go to every meeting with him. Every meeting, I learned how to be a facilitator. I went to these meetings, and I said, this is what I want to do. One thing that Smart Recovery lacked when I came in, though, in the Boston area, there were no facilitators of color that were active in the Boston area. There were areas in Boston that didn't have Smart Recovery meetings, that should have had Smart Recovery meetings. And there was times where they couldn't get into different places. I was able to start a meeting in the heart of Roxbury. From that meeting, there has been 5 black facilitators trained that run Smart Recovery meetings across Boston. I remember when I got my first job because I volunteered at a recovery center, and I got a job working at a recovery center. And when I got there, I had been the first hire that wasn't NA, that wasn't a 12-step program. And this lady who had 20 years of recovery would ask me all the time, why do you go to that meeting filled with a bunch of white people? Just don't understand it. And she's like, how do you relate? And I realized there was this thing going on, that there was a disconnect because they didn't understand. And my director ended up loving Smart Recovery. She loved it so much she took the facilitators training. And they got to understand the things that helped me, the mindfulness, the way I think affects the way I feel affects the way I act. The things that I were able to do. When I went to 12-step meetings, they talked about the tools, but I'd never seen a tool. Didn't know what a tool was. Smart Recovery, I was able to find that tool. Eventually, I moved on from the recovery centers, and I currently am part of a teen center, a recovery teen center. And those things that I do with the youth there is really impressive. We're getting ready to start the first open Smart Recovery teen meeting in the state that I'm currently in. I was no longer using drugs to get high. I was using drugs to die. And that's what I wanted. It no longer became fun. There was no purpose in my life. Now today I live a meaningful life. I get up and I go to work, and I never argue about going to work. I might argue about getting out of the bed, but I never argue about going into work. I deal with youth about 12 hours a day. I work 10 hours with youth, and then I volunteer and I coach youth football for another 2 hours. And everything that I get from them is the things that I wish I would have got from somebody in my community, in my neighborhood. I show them the same support and the caring and the love that I hoped that I had gotten when I was younger. I let them know that they are good at things. I remember I had a dream of being a history teacher and a football coach. And I went to a MECO school, and we did this project on what we wanted to do. Now, a MECO school is where they take inner city kids, bring them into the suburbs. I made this whole project about being a history teacher and a football coach. I gave the presentation, and then one of the kids raised his hand. And he's my best friend. He's still my best friend to this day. He says, "You know that's kind of impossible, right?" And I said, "Why? Do you see any black teachers?" And he was talking about what he saw, and I looked at what I saw, and it stopped me in my tracks. It made me, I can't do that. There's nobody that looks like me. There's nobody that has been through what I've been through to relate to have any frame of knowledge. And that's what I try to give these kids. I look like them, I've been through their experience, and I give them the hope and let them know that they can do the things that they're passionate about. They can be anything they dream to be. Smart Recovery gave me that hope back. It gave me that passion for life back. And I continue to carry that message. I told myself, once I found Smart Recovery, I was going to go into as many facilities as I could and talk about this program. We began doing Smart Recovery commitments and going into detoxes and going into holdings and talking about Smart Recovery. And people would come into my meeting and be like, "Oh, I seen you here, you did this commitment." I wouldn't remember them, but they remembered where to find me. And that's when I knew I was doing something that was really meaningful. And I would like to thank everybody for allowing me to share. I'm gonna go ahead and wrap up.
If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to Smart Recovery's YouTube channel. And don't forget to click the notifications tab to receive automatic updates every time we add new recovery-related content to our channel.